Hi guys. So today I thought that I would tell you a little bit about my reading habits and just kind of introduce myself so that you can get to know me a little bit better as I am starting this new YouTube journey. So my name's Amanda. I am a stay-at-home mom of 4 children, ages 9, 7, 5, and 19 months. I am married. We live in the Midwest, United States. So that's just kind of a little bit about my background. I've always loved reading. It's always been a really big part of my life, but I've gotten into it a lot more recently. I would say over the last like 3 or 4 years, I've really delved back into reading a lot. I found Booktube probably 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago, and just kind of happened across it on YouTube and fell in love and have been an avid watcher ever since. It is a daily habit of mine. And so I thought that why not? Why not just do this and be able to get to talk to some of the booktubers that I've enjoyed watching and get to know them a little bit better maybe through this and make some new friends. And just, I don't know, I would really like to be part of this community, and I think that it would be a fun experience. So thought that I would give this a shot. So I tend to read a variety of things. Recently, my favorite books have all consisted of books where I learned something from them. I really love learning about new cultures, about history, about just a whole breadth of things. I like books that impact my way of thinking. So whether that's historical or whether it's modern and just from a different point of view. I also enjoy reading historical fiction quite frequently, not just World War II historical fiction, but all historical fiction. I think it gives you a way to look into history and different aspects of history that aren't necessarily taught in school, and gives you a new appreciation for the things that people have gone through to get us to where we are today. I also enjoy reading memoirs and things like that, where it's a more personal approach to telling someone's story and just really getting to know their perspective on things. I think a lot can be learned from listening to somebody else's perspective and having an open mind towards them. And so I really have been kind of approaching more books with open minds and with an open mind, and have been learning a lot from them in the process, and I've really enjoyed that. Outside of that, I also read fantasy and sci-fi and contemporaries and just fun things. I tend not to read horror or thriller books very often because I don't like being scared. I don't watch scary movies either, much to my husband's dismay, but I don't enjoy being scared like that, and so I don't typically read a lot of books that have the ability to scare me. I read a lot of graphic novels. I kind of started last year reading graphic novels and fell in love, and just every time I go to the library, I'm going through the graphic novels and grabbing a few here and there to read, whether they're middle grade or young adult or whatever. I've just really been enjoying reading through those, and they're fun, fast reads, and so that's something that I've been enjoying. I also tend to read a lot of middle grade because I do have kids, and so I read out loud to them, but I also enjoy being able to have conversations with them about books. So they will recommend books to me that they've read in school or that their teachers have read them in school, and I'll read them and then be able to get to have conversations with them. I also read middle grade so that I can recommend books to my kids when they ask for a book that I think that they might like. So that's been a really fun experience for me as well. As far as how I read my books, I tend to listen to audiobooks. For probably about 60% of my reading is done with audiobooks. And it might even be higher than that. I constantly have audiobooks going when I'm working on household chores or in the car taking kids to preschool drop off or whatever, getting ready in the morning, those sorts of things. I'm always listening to audiobooks. And about 3 or 4 years ago, we were moving and I was making a lot of really long car rides, and that's when I found audiobooks and fell in love and I've been listening ever since. And so I really enjoy a good audiobook. Like I said, most of my reading is via audiobooks because as a mom, I don't have a lot of time to just sit down and read. I can't sit down and just focus on reading for very long, but if I'm cooking or cleaning or doing things like that, I can listen to something and I find it productive and I feel like I'm getting something else accomplished while I'm doing my cleaning as well. So I really love audiobooks. I also will do ebooks occasionally. My husband can't fall asleep with the lights on, and I like to read while I'm falling asleep. And so I will read my ebooks at night. During the day, I do print books and then my audiobooks. So at any one point in time, I'm typically reading about 4 books. I'll have one audiobook, one ebook, one print book, and then one read aloud book that I'm reading out loud to my kids at any point in time. And so I tend to read multiple books all at the same time. So another thing about my reading habits is that I tend to not reread books very often. I've reread one book that I can recall in my adult life, and it was Timeline by Michael Crichton, and it's not one of my favorite books, but I did enjoy it, and I happened to reread it, but that's the only book that I can remember rereading. So I typically tend not to reread books. I also DNF books frequently, especially audiobooks. If a narrator is just not doing it for me, I will not hesitate to DNF a book. I have no problem setting it down and moving on to something else. I'm also a mood reader. I tend not to do TBRs at all. I very much will only read what I'm in the mood for, and I tend not to deviate from that. I enjoy what I enjoy in the moment, and I go through phases. Right now I'm going through a contemporary phase and enjoying it, and then there are times where I just want to read historical fiction or I want fantasy or whatever it is at the time, but I tend to know what I want to read at that time, and I don't like being told what I have to read, and so I tend not to do TBRs. I tend to only mood read. As far as how I get my books, we pretty much exclusively get books from the library, or we thrift books. We don't buy new books. I say we as in my family. So we don't buy new books very often at all. I thrift books on the regular though. I really enjoy going to Goodwill and Salvation Army and Savers and whichever thrift stores there are around, or garage sales, and finding books there. So a lot of my book collection has been thrifted. Very, very few were purchased new. But we also utilize our library a lot. We go to the library regularly. Me and my kids do. My kids check things out from the library. I said that I listen to audiobooks very frequently. I've never once paid for an audiobook. I only check out audiobooks from my library. And so I'm very fortunate in the fact that my library has apps that I can download on my phone where I can download audiobooks and listen to them from my phone and then return them from my phone. And so it's very, very convenient. So that's how I do all of my audiobooks. If I can't find an audiobook at the library, then I will check out the print version of it. So I don't ever pay for an audiobook because the chance of me ever re-listening to an audiobook is very, very slim, and they can be expensive. So that tends to be where I get my books from, is the library or the thrift store. So that's all that I had to talk about today. I hope that you will comment below. I'd love to get to know some of you better. I'm really excited for this new adventure. And until next time, see ya!